We are back again. This is the Flex Network. I am here. My name is Michael Flex Mike. We're back here. This podcast here is going to touch my heart a little bit. I'm talking about my favorite team. I got my guy Flex Shane on the other side of the glass up in Canada. What's up, brother? How are you?
I'm good, man. How you doing?
Great.
Great.
And then today's guest, we have Christopher Kidd. He is a producer for Sports Radio KGR in Seattle. He is a co-host on a podcast called Seahawks Man to Man Podcast with Michael Sean Dugar. He's just an avid Seahawks fan, and from what I know, he's an avid flag football player. He gets in on that, and he works for The Athletic also as a producer. So here we are. Christopher Kidd, how are you, bud?
Doing good, man. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate you guys' time.
Awesome. So we just wanted to get you on here. We want to talk a little bit of Seahawks. You know, like I said, I'm big Seahawks fan and stuff. So I grew up in the Seattle area. I currently am in Texas. That's where I've been living past few years and stuff. So, you know, I have to deal with these Cowboys fans over here, especially after we lost to them in the playoffs last year, unfortunately. But well, what do you say we jump into it, Shane?
Let's do it.
Well, let's talk about the most obvious thing, because the most obvious thing right now surrounding the Seahawks as a team is the big news of the trade for Jadeveon Clowney. So you hear the rumors leading up to it about kind of where some of this stuff is going and who could be rumored to be traded for Clowney. The Seahawks were obviously in desperate need of some pass rush help. The pass rush was just not operating the way that like we would like it to operate. And what I mean by that is get any form of pressure at all. That would be great to have. And so like we needed to make a move here. And so what are your thoughts on the trade? So what I understand is we gave up a third round pick. We gave up Barkevious Mingo, and we gave up Jacob Martin in order to get Jadeveon Clowney here in Seattle, who is playing under the franchise tag for us. Seattle had to agree not to franchise tag him next year, and Houston paid for $8 million of the, I believe it was $15 million franchise tag, which is in my mind as a Seattle fan. I love John Schneider. I think he's a great GM, but I look at this and I'm like, man, did we just fleece Houston out of a really good football player? I think we absolutely robbed them. And I kind of felt bad, but then I look at the other trade where they traded to get Kenny Stills and Laramie Tunsil, and they got fleeced again there. They gave up a ton to get those two dudes. So at some point, I'm like, I don't feel bad because he is, or the lack of GM in Houston and the Bill O'Brien, the head coach and stuff. At what point do you just not feel bad for them? You're like, well, you're just kind of doing this to yourself, you know?
Business is business. And in this situation, the Seahawks, they knew, for one, that the Texans don't even have a general manager right now.
Right.
Anything thrown at them, they probably consider. And considering all the talks about Jadeveon not being a person that works hard in practice, whether or not that's true, the Texans clearly didn't want him. And they were like, you know what? We can get rid of him. And yes, they did get fleeced. They got in the worst way possible, but I think their biggest concern was just getting rid of him. They didn't want anything to do with it, and they were fine with getting a third-round pick. They were fine with Barkevious Mingo, and they were fine with Jacob Martin. If they're fine with it, you damn well must believe that the Seahawks were like, you know what? This is going to make our team better. We're going to have a better pass rush, and that's ultimately what it came down to. Because going into week one, the pass rush was looking very shaky. That was one of my biggest concerns going into this 2019 campaign.
Right, totally. Shane, what do you think about the trade?
Well, I mean, obviously it was crazy, right? I mean, to me, like Houston, it seems like they went from their stout defense and now they're taking a step back and they're pretty much going all in on their offense, right? I mean, they're trying to finally get a stout line and they're trying to go and just really give Deshaun Watson options. But I don't know. I mean, like for Seattle, like they're going to be a defensive team. Games this year is going to be running the ball. And if you want to be able to run the ball, it means you need to stop other teams, which means a strong defense. So, I mean, it absolutely made sense. And, I was kind of just looking at the cap space the Seahawks have here, and it looks like they've got about $18 million in cap space left over this year. And, I was listening, Chris, to your podcast earlier today, and you guys were thinking that maybe right now they're not going to try to extend him. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I don't see it happening because, for one, we know that Jadeveon Clowney, he's going to want max money.
Yeah.
Depending on how he plays this year, let's say he comes out and he gets 13 sacks. Not bad, right?
Yep.
There's going to be a number of teams that are willing to give him more than what the Seahawks are going to. And we saw that with Frank Clark. Who's better, Jadeveon Clowney or Frank Clark? It's tough, right? You could probably throw it up and say, you know what, we'll take Frank. Oh, you know what, we'll take Jadeveon.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Either
like
way,
1A and 1B, basically.
Exactly. And based on the Seahawks, how they previously do deals, if you're not the number one guy or the top three guy, I mean, look at Bobby Wagner, for example. He's arguably the best linebacker. Did he get paid? Yes. Earl Thomas, sticky situation just because he got hurt. Seahawks were afraid of that, and that's the reason they didn't do that. Russell hasn't had problems with injuries. Bobby Wagner, no problem with injuries. If you're clean, no problem with injuries, the Seahawks will take you. Jadeveon Clowney, he's had some issues with injuries. Has he gotten past that? Absolutely. I think he has turned the corner. He mentioned it in his press conference yesterday. He was saying, people are still saying, I'm hurt, I'm this and that. I'm just ready to play football and prove a point. And that's what he's trying to do in Seattle. And if the Seahawks are willing to pay him long term, that would be shocking. But I ultimately believe that it'll be a one-term deal. And depending on how he performs, let's say the Seahawks go all the way to the divisional round. Jadeveon's going to be a huge part of that. And he's going to, as Mike pointed out on the podcast, he's going to want, my co-host that is, he's going to want to be paid for his services. And to think that the Seahawks are going to be able to dish it out, I'm not going to hang my head and say they will. I'd be willing to bet that they won't. But it was definitely worth the shot. And then you got to look at who the Seahawks have behind them. Rasheem Green. They got a lot of young guys that are going to learn from these quote-unquote veterans. Mm-hmm. And who knows what's next. Next year, we could have a Rasheem Green with 10 sacks. We could have Poona Ford with 5 to 7 sacks. I mean, these guys are talented. They just have Jadeveon now, Ziggy Ansah, LJ Collier. He practiced today, or yesterday was. I mean, there's a lot of talent on this team, and now they got 2 solid defensive end rushers. It's going to be fun to see.
That's exciting. Well, I think one of the things, too, is that Seattle has proven that they're pretty consistent and that they're continuously, every single year, they're in competition for their division and, frankly, for the NFC. And I think a big part of that is that because they're not going to play a guy just because you're paying a guy, right? I mean, the most immediate thing that comes to my head is the Penny Carson dynamic, right? Like Chris Carson, he should not be the starting running back when you just look at the fact that they took Penny in their first round last year. But if Carson's playing better, they're going to start him. And I think that's a good mentality that they take. And that's what I think a lot of teams approach. I mean, I look at my Patriots, it's like they'll go and they're going to play the strongest players on the team. And it doesn't matter if you're making $15 million a year, if you're making $4 million a year. If you're performing, we're going to put you on the team. And I think that the Seahawks approach is that your pedigree is obviously it's important, right? It might get you that opportunity again. But if you're going to be the one getting sacks or putting up points, then you're going to be the one that they play. And I think that is a recipe for success that not all teams do, frankly.
Yeah, totally. There's a it's interesting because like as a Seattle fan, I watch every year, and there always seems to be a national analyst, whether it's one of the bigger networks or whatever it is, but they always seem to say, well, this isn't the year. Seattle's not making the playoffs this year. And I just think when you look at just like how the team is built, how the team is operated, and all of those things, that as long as Russell Wilson is on the team, you have at minimum at least a shot of being in the mix when it comes to making the playoffs.
Yep.
I believe it was 2 years ago. Pete Prisco was saying, I think that was the guy that said it, Pete Prisco. It was projected the Seahawks to go 4-12. And as a fan, I'm sitting there, I'm like 4-12. Like, I get that we've lost some guys on defense and stuff like that, but 4-12, Russell Wilson's got it Russell Wilson by himself is good for 6 wins at least, I think. And then I look at it from another perspective where Tom Cable decides, oh, let me draft all these project linemen who used to be basketball stars in college, and now I'm going to turn them into all pro offensive linemen, which obviously didn't work. That's why Tom Cable's not here anymore. And that's why we've moved on from some of those players. But it's just a situation where it's like, as long as Russell's there, it's going to work. Russell took the worst offensive line in the league to the playoffs, running for his life every time he got the ball, permanently in shotgun, permanently rolling out, and just doing his thing. So I just look at it and I just think, as long as Russell's there, we're always going to have a shot to be in the mix. And just the more that we add, just if you look at the Frank Clark situation, and we trade Frank Clark to the Chiefs, and we get those draft picks. We turned, what was it? I believe 4 draft picks into 12 when all was said and done with. I mean, from a GM perspective, it's hard to get better than that. I mean, I look at it and I say we won the offseason. Some of those draft picks, you don't really know what they're going to be yet, obviously. But from what we've seen, most of them have turned out to be pretty good, which kind of segues perfectly into my next question, which is, man, we got a full room when it comes to wide receivers. We got a very full room. We got some guys who a lot of Seattle fans think should be on the 53-man roster that are actually on our practice squad. So Chris, what do you think about that? You think the Seahawks made the right choice when it came to what receivers are on the starting roster?
Initially, they scared me. When they cut Jerron Brown, I was wondering, what did he do wrong? But then after research, they had to move cash around, and it's quite apparent they didn't let him know that. They just cut him and said, thank you. Because I don't know if you guys saw his tweet. He said, peace out, Seattle. It's been an amazing ride, et cetera, to that extent. Clearly, he had no idea the Seahawks planned to bring him back. And then when they did, I said, okay, this is what I was expecting.
Makes sense, yeah.
Yeah, John Ursua, that was good. Basically, everyone, there's 2 question marks with Gary Jennings. He didn't really do much, but he was drafted in the 4th round, so technically you got to keep him, right?
Can you tell me about Gary Jennings? Because there's been like no buzz the entire offseason about Gary Jennings.
To be honest, the practice that I was at, it wasn't much. I mean, he was there. I'll be honest, he was there.
Yeah.
But it wasn't anything to what DK Metcalf or even John Ursua, a 7th rounder, as you were just touching in regards to Chris Carson and Rashad Penny. John Ursua is in that same position. Out of all the wide receivers that were drafted, he stood out the most. He didn't have the most. He wasn't the man like DK. Everyone knew who DK was. John Ursua was a guy out of Hawaii. Who? But
right.
I'm kidding.
his play in practice and on the field proved worthy, and that's why he made this team. But Gary Jennings was definitely a question mark. Jazz Ferguson started slow, but he came on late, which is why he got the nod in the practice squad, which I thought he would make the team, but I understand why they did that. John has been doing he's been doing a phenomenal job, and just watching him in camp and even in the preseason games, I think he's gonna get some play. He might be that 3rd down guy where they do a play action and there he is. Somehow he's open, but that's because he's good in and out of breaks. He can catch the ball and he doesn't take punishment.
What about DK? I mean, it looks like he's actually going to be healthy. He's expected to play in week 1. I mean, what are your impressions with him?
Physical. He's big, strong, fast. He matches on all the boxes. If you want to put down your star receiver, he pretty much checks all of it off. The one question in mind is his route running in certain routes. Sometimes he gets lazy, but for the most part, I think he's going to be a useful target for us. It's just do they have that chemistry, because in practice, I noticed, and I talked to Mike Moshan Dugar, that is, about, hey, he's running with the 2s and 3s a lot. Yeah, he runs with the 1s here and there, but he spends more time with Paxton Lynch and Geno Smith during practice, that was, in training camp. And now we're in the regular season, and I don't know if he's built that camaraderie with Russ to say, hey, this is what I like to do. This is how I do things. It's going to be very interesting to see how those 2 connect on Sunday when this is a real game here.
Yeah. So if it's a two receiver set, do you think that DK is going to be on the field opposite Tyler Lockett, or what do you think is going to happen there? Because
I would put my bet that it's Jerron Brown,
okay,
Yeah.
really,
a guy that's been in the system that knows it. Unless DK has done something that Pete Carroll and the staff are like, you know what, we're gonna put him in. I really see Jerron Brown being that guy with Tyler Lockett if they're gonna do that formation.
so DK is more
Right.
of a project. Like when I think of DK, he reminds me a lot of Cortland Sutton. Like
Oh,
a
okay.
lot of talent, just an absolute beast on the field, but he's a project, right? He needs just a little bit more. He needs to work on that agility, his route running, that sort of thing, his finesse, if you will.
Absolutely, yeah. That's one of the things he needs to work on, especially catching the football. I
Mhm.
mean, I'm really curious to see how he performs with Russ throwing him the ball. Russell throws really good passes,
Yeah,
and he's going to be put to the test. Russ throws it very high, and it drops down. Tyler Lockett's able to make those catches. Jerron Brown makes those catches. It's going to be exciting to see what DK can bring to this team. And then you mentioned his route running. He just has to work on a few things in technique. I mean, those are things that can be fixed throughout the year. I don't know if you guys remember Randy Moss when he came in the league. Excuse me. He was running just streaks, and that was it.
yeah,
But
Right.
as he got better and matured, coaches were adding to his game. I'm not comparing, by no means am I comparing DK to Moss. All I'm saying is DK can definitely learn to be a better receiver. It's just going to take time. And if he really wants to, if he's down to take that challenge, that's another thing. You have to really want it. Everybody can show you and teach you all these things, but you have to want to do it. If DK wants to do it, the guy can be really talented, but it's going to start week 1.
yeah.
Yeah,
I
one of
heard.
the
Oh,
one of
sorry.
the one of the things I wanted to talk about real quick is we kind of mentioned route running, right?
Yeah.
So I played football myself. I'm skinny and white, so I'm not burning down the field beating anybody. So though I had to pull a little bit of Julian Edelman out of there and just be a good route runner. So when I see a receiver who is Mike Wallace esque, also known as only fade routes, only go routes, only post routes. Those things kind of bother me because I was a guy who would go across the middle and I wouldn't care because I was a good route runner. And so when I see the criticism of a DK Metcalf about not being that great of a route runner, um, it's just funny because you see things on Twitter and they're showing DK Metcalf run like a 12-yard comeback,
Yeah,
and they're like, "Oh, he's taking too many steps. He's turning this way. He should be turning that way." And there's a lot of Twitter general managers out there who tell you, or Twitter scouts out there who tell you how to run a comeback. And I did see some where he took too many steps or whatever, but at the same time, I'm like, dude's running in just a helmet. He's running half speed. He's not,
Oh, I
he's
think that was full speed. He's quick, man. That's the thing.
no, but the videos that I've been seeing surface on Twitter are not DK at full speed. He's not going one-on-one with somebody. He's running against air. And so those types of things are like a little bit, I don't know, a little bit they're just
Overblown.
kind of they're just picking on the guy for whatever reason.
Yeah.
Well, it
So
was. I think it was a cone drill, right? That's what he really struggled with in the combine was the cone drill,
oh yeah, his
and
agility was
yeah, his
slow
agility
on that.
score.
Yeah.
So okay, one thing I've heard, Chris, is that like for guys that need to work on their agility, they start doing things like yoga. Have you ever heard anything like that?
Oh,
Like,
yeah. Oh,
yeah,
yeah, absolutely. I mean, what that does is opens your hips. The more flexible you are, the better you are in and out of breaks.
okay.
I mean, you might hear about players doing ballet.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. I mean,
Oh, who was it? Ah, shoot, it was the Ravens running back that did the Irish dancing. His name's
ah,
escaping me.
dang.
It was like from 2
I
years
know
ago.
I know who you're referencing as well.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah.
Man, yes. Those I mean, people laugh and say, why do they do that? But it's all about being flexible. The more flexible you are, the better. I mean, look at Antonio Brown.
Yeah.
He probably does things we're questioning. Why is he doing that? Well, there's a reason why he's able to break triple teams. He
Oh
uses his body very well. It's all about the use of your head, your neck, your legs, your eyes. All that comes into play. And if DK can master, hell, just his feet and hands, he's already on the right path. He just has to keep getting better. The more you do, the better. I mean, if I could do yoga, I would do it.
yeah.
But I produce
So,
podcasts and do radio. I'm
Yeah,
yeah,
lazy.
exactly.
so let's talk about a topic that is a little bit closer to kind of what you have talked about on your podcast, and that's Tyler Lockett, right?
Yes.
Your boy Mike seems to think that he's a top 10 route runner,
Oh
and
man, this.
and I understand where he's coming from with that, but I'm also I would say that I'm much further on your side than I am on his side.
Thank you.
Just because he's not a top 10 route runner. Here we go with these comments.
Shout out
one
Matt,
of our
man.
one of our he says that Tom Brady had a better agility combine than DK.
He's one of our
I'm just-
co-hosts, Matt.
I'm just going to leave that one alone right there. But anyway, back to Tyler Lockett. First of all, I just have to say last year he had an incredible year.
Yes.
And from what we've seen in him in the preseason so far, it looks like they're right back on the same page. He's right back on pace and all of those things. But I would just say and I want to get your take on this, Chris, but I would just say to the untrained eye, I think that people confuse good or great route running with someone's ability to use their speed to get separation. And I think that's something that Tyler Lockett does very well, because when you see him running at full speed, he doesn't look fast at all. He doesn't look like he's running super fast. He's just, he's moving down the field. And I mean, obviously, that he's fast when he's burning by you on a post route or something. But what's your take on that? Because I know you said he's not a top 10 route runner, but where would you put him in that? And I guess if we have to rank it, where would you put him?
Okay. Well, if I had to put him anywhere, he would definitely. Well, that's cool. He would definitely land between, I would say, 12 and 15, because you pointed his speed, his ability. When he runs by somebody, that's not elite route running. That is simply him being faster than that player, and that's that. There are times where he does run a really nice post route, and there are route running effects in there. But to say he's top 10, and then for me to name 10 guys and people disagree still, I mean, that's I get it. He's a Seahawk. Seattle fans are our huge audience. No disrespect to people that have listened to us anywhere else, but I know a huge market of our listeners are Seattle based. So when I say that he's not, I understand where everyone's coming from. But if you simply just go watch an AJ Green, go watch an Odell Beckham, they do the whole route tree. When have you seen Tyler Lockett do a 7-yard out? When have you seen Tyler Lockett do an 8-yard curl?
Time.
When have you seen Tyler Lockett do a hitch? These are routes that elite route runners, the Odells, the Antonios, the Michael Thomases, they all do it. And they also do what Tyler's doing. The deep post corner, the deep post, the double move, the up and out. They do it all. And that's what separates good route runners from the elite. And Tyler's a good route runner. Can he become elite? Yes. I just need to see the 7-yard out. I need to see the hitch. I need to see the 7-yard in going over the middle. And if he can do that, absolutely, he'll be a top 10.
Yeah, and I think too, what he's got on the side, he's got a guy like Russell Wilson who's extremely accurate, right? I mean,
oh yeah,
was it the highest efficiency in history, in NFL history?
Second highest.
Second highest. Okay.
To this day, I still don't know who's number one. I asked.
Yeah,
I thought it was number one.
Yeah, PFF Focus. I don't know if maybe Mike and I had that much buzz, but he tweeted, Mike sent me the screenshot and he showed me that. And he's like, they're second, Chris. Okay, who's number one?
Yeah, no kidding.
That was my biggest concern, because the number one guy, actually, I think, you know what? The number one player was someone, I think it was, Mike did, I think we did find out who it was, but it was someone that nobody would have thought of. And that was to my point. Oh, yeah. Because
it's probably like one of these old guys, like before like they really started tracking these sort of things.
No, it wasn't an old guy. It was someone current. It was someone. Really? It was someone recent. Yeah, and to my point, yeah, that's a great stat and all, but that just proves that he's a lot faster. It doesn't mean he's a top 10 route runner.
Right.
I mean, there's more to it than just being fast. And I asked one of my friends who played Division II college football, and I said, "What do you look at? What do you consider a great route runner as a wide receiver?" And he was telling me the ability to get in and out of his breaks. Okay, Tyler can do that pretty well, but is he better than these 10 guys?
Yeah.
If you're arguing that he is, hey, you can sell that ship. We've brought on multiple guests that write about football, that have played football. I mean, we had Cliff Averill, who was like, nah, he's not top 10. And I know Cliff Avril's a defensive lineman, defensive tackle, however you want to put it. He rushes the passer, but he's seen Tyler Lockett, and he's also seen the best of the best. And it's not a discredit to Tyler. Please understand. I'm not dissing Tyler by any shape, any form. I'm just keeping it 100 and saying that he's not top 10. That's
You're
all.
basically splitting hairs, right? Like when we're talking about the top 10s, it's an elite conversation essentially.
Yeah, I mean, if he ends up at number 12, that's not a diss. That's just he's not better than these 11 guys that I named. And
Yeah.
when Mike is telling me he's a better route runner than DeAndre Hopkins, I'm like, come on, man, really? Have you seen D Hop? I mean, yes, he catches everything,
Hey,
but
that's the GOAT right now. I don't care what anybody says.
there you go. I mean,
He's
and
disgusting.
that's fine, and I have no problem with that.
Hey,
But
so here's one last thing on Tyler Lockett. One of our commenters, Matt, wants to know if Lockett is a wide receiver number 1 in fantasy football this year.
I would not do it.
You wouldn't do it. There you go, ladies and gentlemen.
It's a risk because you have to remember, what do the Seahawks love to do?
Run the damn ball.
Run the ball.
Yeah.
And yes, while Lockett may get 2 catches for 50 yards, it's inconsistent. He could have 1 week where he goes 3 catches, 150 yards, and a touchdown. That's a great week. And then the next week he could have 0 catches. That's what you're willing. If you're willing to risk that, you can go ahead and draft him, but I wouldn't do it. I would recommend going with a DeAndre Hopkins, a Devontae Adams, a Julio Jones, even Odell, which is it can be iffy because there's a lot of targets in Brown City right now. They have a lot of players they can go to. A lot. That's tricky, but Tyler Lockett, I think he's a safe 3rd wide receiver. If you're looking just to fill a spot, he can definitely get you a lot of points as a 3rd wide receiver for sure.
Okay. So then I'm going to steal this one here because since we're on the topic of fantasy football, so we've got a few different types of podcasts that we do with the Flex Network. The one that I'm on is typically fantasy football focused.
Nice.
That's kind of the world that I live around. So I guess the question is that Chris Carson, Rashad Penny, end of the year, like right now, people are drafting Chris Carson as assuming that he's going to be the top running back. Do you see Penny eating into it as the season goes on, or do you think it's going to be similar to last year?
I think it's probably going to be similar to last year. And guess who's back, ladies and gentlemen? CJ Prosise.
I know. He's healthy, right?
He's healthy, and he looks good. He looks very good. I saw the last preseason game that he played in, the final one. I mean, the one in his 3rd preseason game, week 3 and week 4. He looks back. He looks good. He's healthy. This almost reminds me of what happened with Rashad Penny last year when Michael Davis was on the scene.
Yes.
Oh, boy. Mike Davis was in there getting carries, scoring touchdowns.
Good, though.
Penny was pushed to the side. And that's my fear this season is that CJ ultimately is going to get that nod as the 2nd back, which means if you drafted Rashad Penny, you're going to be in trouble because CJ Prosise will be getting carries. But we'll see what happens week 1. I do know that Rashad Penny definitely needed assistance. He got behind the starting O-line and looked a lot better. Did we see the Rashad Penny that the Seahawks drafted? No, we did not. We did not see that explosive guy that gets into the secondary. We haven't seen that. But the Seahawks like what they're getting from him. It's going to be fun at running back. But I do know Chris Carson is definitely number 1. But now number 2 is kind of shaky. I mean, right now it could be Rashad Penny. But also with CJ Prosise healthy, I think personally he's the 2nd best running back on that team.
That makes me tingly, man, because like CJ Prosise is one of these players. There's always a few players that people are like, there's the truthers, right? The people that just can't let that opportunity die. I think, now correct me if I'm wrong, CJ Prosase's kind of breakout game was when he played against the Patriots like 3 years ago, if I want to say.
You are absolutely correct. Mike and I touch on that quite often just because that was a coming out party. That was amazing. The things he was able to do, he looks very good. And then plays against the Eagles, gets hurt. And that was the last we saw of him.
It's heartbreaking.
And
I want to pause this podcast right now so I can go freaking pick him up in some of my dynasty teams.
Yeah, it's going to be fun to see what happens. I just hope Rashad Penny can just get some consistency. I mean, if he's consistent, the sky's the limit. But if he falls into a lack of confidence, whatever it may be, CJ Prosise is right there, and he's ready for it. CJ wants this opportunity. He's been chilling, not playing for basically 2 years. He is ready to play. He wants to. I mean, Mike told me that he was in the locker room, and he just was like, bro, you're healthy. Like, this is dope. Congratulations, man. You got a touchdown. And CJ was like, yeah, man, I feel great, which is awesome.
Is he a good locker room guy? Like, obviously, they've kept him around for this long time.
To be honest, I'm not 100% sure if he's a great locker room guy. I'm pretty sure he is, but
Okay.
for the most part, I think he's just an all-around great running back, great
Yeah.
guy,
Like a
and
good
he's going to do what
football
it
player.
takes. Good
I mean, he's
football
the kind
player.
of guy
Yep.
Pete Carroll wants to keep around on his team. That makes sense.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's
Exactly.
in Seattle, I feel like it's one of those situations where you almost have to be like really detrimental to the team for Pete Carroll to move you, because Pete Carroll's kind of like of the mindset where I can almost fix any situation. I think that's how he thinks. Like, I just need to have a conversation with the guy. If I can talk to the guy, I can make this better. Um, like when Michael Bennett left and you heard all those rumblings about Michael Bennett reading books during team meetings because he didn't take him seriously and all that stuff. You didn't hear about any of that stuff until it was all gone, until he was on a different team and all of those things. And so I think that, just on the locker room stuff, I think that Pete Carroll is sitting right there and he's just saying, I could fix almost any relationship. I just need to talk to the guy.
Yeah.
So, and 9 times out of 10, the things they're upset about are either passing on the goal line in the Super Bowl or something like that, or they're upset about money. Those seem to be the things that this over the last 5 years or so, those are things that players have been upset about. So
I'm actually really glad you mentioned that, not because of the outcome, but because I think, like, so going back, obviously it was a pretty crazy game, right? Like, nobody thought that they would throw the ball, but there's something like a 93 or 96% success rate with that slant play, which is, I think, why they decided to throw the ball instead of run it. It was just something that I heard, like, when they were analyzing it after. But I'm starting to hear now too that, like, Brian Schottenheimer, who's he's been around the league for a long time, but he's actually starting to look at data analytics and take that approach to his team. Have you guys heard anything about that? Like, have you heard that the Seahawks are taking a different approach than, say, some of these older regimes?
Yeah, for the most part, I have, especially with Mike. They want to stick to the run game, but they're open to try new things, whether it is
Yeah.
passing on certain downs. But to be honest, Mike did an interview. He just told me he talked with Pete Carroll just a little bit,
Okay.
and basically, for the most part, Pete Carroll's sticking with his guns. They
Oh,
are
yeah.
going to run it, and that's what they're going to do. I mean, if there's a time where it presents itself in the past, we know the Seahawks will pass. But for the most part, without spilling too much of the beans, Pete Carroll is pretty stubborn, and
Yeah.
he's going to. I mean, there's a reason why they have a fullback still on the roster.
Mhm.
right.
I mean,
Man, it works. The Patriots do the same thing. I keep bringing it back to it, but the reason being is that two teams that have consistently been successful are the Patriots and the Seahawks, and it's because they understand what works. They don't get fancy, and it wins games, man.
yeah, it's all about winning nowadays, and
Absolutely.
Patriots, they are winning. The Seahawks are trying to get back to winning,
Yep.
and they had a decent year last season. They lost in the wild card, but they believe they can get better. And technically, if you look at it with Jadeveon Clowney, I would give them a half a win. They're looking at,
Yeah.
instead of 10, maybe 10 and a half, you round up 11-5. That's better than last year. They went 10-6. There's improvement. And now you still have Russ. You got Tyler Lockett. Yes, they lost Doug Baldwin, but they got a few wide receivers in DK and John O'Shua that I think can possibly make a difference. We'll see what happens with Gary Jennings.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what do you- Sure, go ahead, Mike.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we talked about analytics and stuff, but one of the things I was thinking about is, after I was watching college football this weekend and you saw a team like Nebraska, right? Nebraska comes out against the Alabama State. Nebraska should be blowing Alabama State just completely out of the water because they're Nebraska and the other team is Alabama State. That's just the way it works, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if you look at the stat line, you'll see that Nebraska had about 3 running backs play throughout the entirety of that game, and they had 44 carries for 98 yards. That is horrible. That is beyond horrible for the amount of carries that you gave your team, right? And so one of the things that I thought about instantly was like, man, are they beating their head against the wall when it comes to some stuff like that? Because you saw Seattle play Dallas in the wild card round this last year, and as a fan, you sit there and you're like, why are we still running the ball? Like, okay, the run isn't working, and every time there was a pass play, it looked like that stuff was working for us. Russell Wilson and Tyler Lockett and the rest of the receivers were able to kind of take advantage of that. And you saw that late in the game where Seattle was basically able to score 10 points in like less than 2 minutes. Do you in your mind, do you think that at some point the Seahawks are going to kind of, I'm not saying not be a run first team, but lean more towards a little bit more balanced instead of being so far heavy on the run?
You want my complete answer? Honest answer?
Yes.
I do. I
Yes.
don't, man. I don't see the
Okay.
Seahawks really doing it. They stick by their mantra and what Pete Carroll believes. You run the ball. You control the game. You control that clock and everything else.
Right.
You don't turn the ball over. And for the
Mhm.
most part, he's accurate. But if it's not working, you need to move the ball somehow. And with Russell Wilson as your quarterback, I mean, you put Russell anywhere else in the league. I mean, for example, I'm not a big fan of doing imaginary swaps, but for this sake, we're going to do it right now. You put Russell Wilson with the Chiefs,
Oof.
they probably win the Super Bowl.
Or the
Well,
Colts.
how about they actually get to the Super Bowl? I'll just say that. They get to the Super Bowl. They
Yeah.
win that game. You put him with the Colts. I mean, I
Oof.
don't know if I'm going to put him there because that old line was just terrible, and that's why Andrew Luck
Back
retired.
in the
But
day. Yeah,
Right.
yeah. Now though, they're stout. Finally, a little too
Yeah.
late, I
I
guess.
mean,
but
Russell is able to do things that a lot of quarterbacks can't. He's already undersized. People said he couldn't do it. He can't win a Super Bowl. He got there and he did that. He's trying to
Right.
get another Super Bowl, and he has the ability to do that. I mean, he's a top 3 quarterback in the NFL. I mean, you can make the argument he's the best. No disrespect to Tom Brady, but if you want to
no,
argue
of
that,
course.
you can make
Yeah.
that argument. He's definitely top 3. I will go Brady, Breeze, Russell Wilson.
Right.
Easy. Aaron Rodgers wasn't that good last season.
No.
Russell is right there, and he's only getting better. That's the thing. He's not
Right.
taking any steps back. He's focused, and he has some talent around him. Yes, he lost Doug Baldwin, but that's not going to stop him. He's still going to go out, and he's going to give it his all.
Right. So earlier we had a commenter and he said he was talking about Russell Wilson from Matt here. He said if the Seahawks win 11 games, Russell Wilson for MVP. We've talked about this a couple times over the years, you know, the specifically that year where Doug Baldwin and Russell Wilson connected and they had just insane numbers. I think it was the last 8 games of the season. And then the season where Russell Wilson did it all, carried the worst offensive line in the league to the playoffs. It seems like every year he's in the MVP conversation, but no one like takes it seriously enough to do any like to actually give him the nod. And what do you think about that? Do you think this could be the year that he could win the MVP, or is that just, you think that's just too far out of the picture and it's Seattle, so they're not going to give them the shine that they deserve?
For Russ to win MVP, he's going to have to throw for about 40 touchdowns.
Yeah.
I know, right? You would, if he throws 40 touchdowns and rushes for 8 and throws
That'd be a
and-
lot.
yeah, and he throws for another, let's say he throws for about 3,500 yards. There you go.
Well, didn't he throw 39 last year?
Exactly, but he would have to
Yeah.
throw 40 touchdowns.
Oh,
You know,
okay.
Yeah.
He's got to
Yeah.
get that 40 because Patrick
Oh.
Mahomes, I mean, you have
Put up 50. Yeah.
Yeah.
you put up 50, it's case closed. But if
Right.
if Russ can get 40, run for about 7 or 8, and throw for 35, and the Seahawks win 11 games, depending on how everyone else does,
Yeah. It's
because
all relative.
I do believe that now that Deshaun Watson has a little protection, I mean, his receivers he has DeAndre Hopkins, Kenny Stills, Will Fuller. If Will Fuller can stay healthy, he has a shot there. Who else is out there? Quarterback Cam Newton, if he's healthy,
Cam,
I mean,
yeah.
Cam's probably going to run for 1,000 yards, and he's going to score on his feet. He's going to throw. I don't know how his receivers look, but Greg Olsen appears to be healthy. The conversation
His
about
receivers look good. His receivers look good.
they look okay. Well, then we'll go with they look good. I mean, there's a possibility that Cam could be in the conversation. I mean, what about a defensive player, Aaron Donald winning it? I mean, it's possible. I mean, there's a lot of players out there that have a shot at winning it. I mean, Matt Ryan.
I think to your point, they have to get the wins. And I was looking at their schedule just before the pod here, and so it looks like they're playing the AFC North, which is a little bit more defensive minded. But I mean, it could be a shootout against the Steelers, could be a shootout against Cleveland, and then they're playing the NFC South, which all those games are pretty much shootouts.
Yeah.
So I mean, I could see him putting up the points, and I mean, I guess it goes back to your original point, Mike, about if they keep running the ball. Like, I don't think that's going to win against guys like Matt Ryan or Drew Brees. Like, they're going to have to throw the ball.
Yeah, they have to throw the ball, and they're basically leaning on they get to control the possession. They wanna run the ball for 7 to 8 minutes, chew that clock up, and let their defense have rest. And Jadavian get after the quarterback. Ziggy get after the
Yep.
quarterback. Bobby Wagner make plays. Shaquille Trey defend. That's the Pete Carroll way, and
Yep.
it's for the most part it can be successful. But to your point, if you're trailing, you have to throw the ball. But by then, I mean, if you look at the Seahawks receivers, I don't know if DBs are shaking in their boots going, damn, we got John Ursua, Tyler Lockett, DK Metcalf, Jerron Brown. Whereas previous years, Doug Baldwin, how do you cover the guy? Because Russell scrambles, and now who do you cover?
Mhm.
Russell scrambles,
Right.
Tyler Lockett's open. I mean, the scramble drill between Russ and Doug was one of a kind.
Yep.
I
It's
mean,
unmatched.
if there's a crazy stat out there that says Russ scrambled X amount of times, and this is the yards he gained with Doug Baldwin throwing to him. Someone give me that stat because I'm sure it is crazy. How many times a player had broken down, and Russ looks at him and he points, and Doug's like, "I got you," touchdown, first
Yeah.
down,
It
big
was
play.
amazing. Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, okay. So I guess one of the things too is that, like, last year, Russell Wilson wasn't running as often.
Yeah.
And that was because, I guess, well, they were trying to run the ball more often. If they end up throwing the ball, like, I know they're obviously going to be a run first team, but if they are throwing the ball more, do you think that he's going to get a little bit more rushing yards and maybe get up from 5 touchdowns to 8 rushing touchdowns?
Well, to be honest, the Seahawks offensive line has improved. I
Yeah.
mean, he's the O line's good. Last year,
Finally.
last year they were, the
Yeah.
year prior they were not good. But now they're at a point where they are good. And if Russ is back there and he has time, he may scramble, but at the same time, he may just say, "Do this, get open, I'll throw it to you." And
Yeah.
that's what I think he probably will do. I don't think he'll use his legs as much again, unless the O line, knock on wood, there's an injury somewhere, and now there's a weak side. Because right now, everybody looks healthy except for Mikey Potty. I don't know if he's going to be playing week 1, but Ethan Pocic, he seems to be filling that void just fine. And Pete Carroll has said multiple times, hey, if Mike's not ready, Ethan will definitely play it, and he's looked good, and we're happy to have him do it. And that's where I think it is right now. Russ running, it's going to be up in the air. I don't see it unless there's something that happens with the O line, but the run play options are available, will be
Yep.
available again. RPOs are, I mean, people know them as RPOs, run player
Yep.
options, run pass options, excuse me. But we'll see what happens. And they also do the option every now and then, and there are times where Russ will keep it and gain a few yards, but I don't see it being heavy run from Russ. I see Russ doing a lot of handing off and in certain situations, play action and finding guys downfield through the zone defenses or if they're in man.
Yeah,
Well, how
let's talk about that real quick. We talk about Chris Carson, like we got a commenter here that says people don't know, but he's not just a 3-down back because he can block. Highly underrated pass catching ability. You've heard Pete Carroll and stuff talk about Chris Carson's hands, how he can catch the ball and all of those things. And I think a lot of Seahawks fans generally look at Rashad Penny as kind of filling that pass catching role because they want to get Penny in space because that's where they think he's really dynamic. How it it's almost like if Chris Carson is adding this pass catching ability to his game, is he slowly just eliminating a need for Rashad Penny, or like how much do you believe Pete Carroll when he says they're going to get him involved in the passing game?
I want to see it because that's to your point. Why even draft Rashad Penny?
Right.
You could have easily gone elsewhere with the pick, but I think they do want to try it out. And I'm thinking more of screenplays, maybe on 3rd and long. Hey, let's just dump a screen. But in that situation, I'd probably bring in CJ Procise, to be completely honest with you. And I would let Chris Carson be the first down, second down back because he's a brute. The guy, he might have been made in a factory for all I know. I mean, the dude he's huge, fast, strong, and he doesn't go down on first contact. And now you want him catching the ball out of the backfield. I mean, if that's what you want to do, you can, but I think you want him for the long haul, and they're going to give him a bunch of touches anyway. He's probably going to get 25 touches week 1, maybe. I'd say between 19 and 25 touches week 1. That's what he's going to get.
For
And you want to
sure.
throw the ball to him? Now you're adding maybe 5 more touches. I mean, that's a lot for a running
Right.
back. And health hasn't been an issue with him, but there have been some red flags. I mean, he did break his leg 2 seasons ago. That was unfortunate. And he's come back and he's bounced back from that. But I think the Seahawks need to just play smart. I mean, you have CJ Prosaf, Rashad Penny. Yeah, that's great that Chris Carson can catch out of the backfield, but I think you should hand it to him and
Yep.
use the others, CJ and Rashad Penny, out the backfield. I mean, hell, you can put Rashad Penny as a punt returner. Let him get his confidence up and see what else he can do. Don't just have him as the third down running back if that's the case, and then CJ Prosise. See if he can do kick return. Let Tyler Lockett be your receiver. I know Tyler said that he wants to do everything and anything he possibly can, but health is of concern. I'm sure the Seahawks want players to be healthy, and that's why you have multiple backs. You can use them. They got Travis Homer. Figure out a way to use him. Maybe he can do some kick return as well. There's got to be a way to utilize Chris Carson as a elite running back and also utilizing your other backs, whether it be CJ, Rashad Penny, Travis Homer. Figure out a way. Don't just give Chris Carson 30 touches a game. I don't know if that's the best way to do things. Give everybody else involved.
No, that's good. Well, okay, so we've got a few more questions. We'll get you out of here shortly, Chris. We really appreciate your time. But I just, going back to blocking and whatnot, is there a tight end worth drafting in fantasy this year? Like, is Will Disley worth drafting, or is he just going to be a blocking tight end and that's it?
See, if you asked me that last season, considering that I said the Seahawks would draft Will Disley, which they did, yay,
Yeah.
Uncle Will.
Uncle, that's a great nickname for him. To draft him last season, you would have been living in heaven until he got hurt because he was Russell Wilson's pretty much favorite target.
Right.
And if you want to draft him again, I would say he would be the backup tight end.
Okay.
And I would say just draft him as the backup just because you don't know. If your tight end's on a bye week, would it hurt you? Maybe, but also he could help. I mean, if he's 100% healthy, I'm not sure how big of a threat in the red zone he will be because now you got DK, who is a 6'3", 6'4" wide receiver, 220. And then you have Will Disley, and the Seahawks like to run the ball. Where does he fall in that ranking? Is he number 1 to get a touchdown? Is he number 2? Is he last? Those are questions that we're going to have to see week 1 because I'm assuming he will be healthy enough to play. Pete Carroll said he's looked good, all that, blah, blah, blah. I would say if you want to take him, he's got to be your second tight end. If you're drafting multiple, I would say take him as a second tight end just to see what happens. Because, again, he could play well, but then also he could goose egg.
Yeah. So he might be somebody that you don't draft and you kind of just hold on to. And then
I mean, you could literally just watch him. I would just click the watch on him and see how he does. Watch his progress. Because I don't think if you look at the percentages, it's probably really low as who drafted Will Disley. Because he's coming off an injury. He was playing that well, but you also look at the Seahawks offense and what they like to do. He was brought in to run block and pass block, but he exceeded expectations and was catching balls, leading the team in receptions the first few games,
right,
and touchdowns.
God, that's football though, man. That's football.
Absolutely. Okay.
So I got one more question, Mike. Do you have?
Yeah, I was just wanted to add there about Will Disley. I just looked up real quick on this fantasy football app. It said percentage rostered for Will Disley is 2.9%.
Sounds right.
So that 2.9% all lives in Seattle, I'm sure.
Yeah. So, or like the auto drafters, the guys who left their draft in the last couple rounds or something.
That too.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, just one of the things I wanted to say about Will Disley is that last year we really the Seahawks obviously started out 0-2, and the first game was against Denver, and Denver pretty much locked up the receivers and were getting just nasty consistent pass rush on Russell Wilson and just making him run for his life the whole game. But the one player that I guess they just didn't cover was Will Disley. And he was just open over the middle. And I think he had over 200 yards receiving against the Broncos that game, which is a pretty good defense. Yep. And so that was just really surprising on Will Disley. So I think Seahawks fans, they see Will Disley and they're really hoping for the best. It kind of reminds me of the days, in the early 2000s, the Seahawks had Jeremy Stevens, and we got a lot of work out of Jeremy Stevens with Matt Hasselbeck, and so they love seeing the tight end. If the tight end can get used in the right way, obviously the Jimmy Graham experiment didn't ever pan out the way a lot of fans were hoping, and we've had some other tight ends and stuff, and um, it's been interesting, but I think now we kind of have a stable of tight ends, but I wouldn't say that I agree with you, Chris. I don't think there's really any tight end that we have right now that um, would ever be considered fantasy relevant.
Yeah. It's just one of those where last season, if you drafted him, wow, you were looking very good the first few weeks. And after that, you're like, oh, shoot.
Just
Now what?
Yeah.
cratered, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, I got my last question for you.
All right.
So, do you think the Seahawks are going to win the division? And second part of that, what do you think they're going to finish if the record's going to be this year?
I don't think they'll win a division because the Los Angeles Rams are just better,
Mhm.
to be honest. I mean, it's Aaron Donald's there. There's
They're
no
so
answer for him. He's very good. The Seahawks definitely have a chance. It's
Yeah.
just I don't think they're ready this year. If Jadeveon Clowney for some reason decides to stay in Seattle, I think next year they will get the Rams.
Okay.
It's not basketball where you can bring a group together and win immediately. Football, there's a lot more that goes into it. And 1 year, the Seahawks. I mean, you think about it like this: how long did the Seahawks run the NFC West before the Rams came knocking? You guys remember how long that reign was for the Seahawks?
What was that? 5-6 years before
Five,
anyone?
6 years before
Yeah.
anyone. And then even when the Rams were coming, the Seahawks were still winning. And then
Right.
1 year, the Rams, they got really good. And we saw the progression. The Seahawks are now in that state where they're getting better, but I don't think they've reached that threshold where they're taking it back over. And I think next year they definitely will. And I'm excited to see that. How they finish this year, as I did mention before, I was on 10-6. But now adding Jadeveon Clowney, I got to round it up. I'm going to say 11-5. I think this team can go 11-5. I think they will definitely earn a spot in the postseason,
Mhm.
and we'll see what happens from there. But right now, I'm inking down 11-5 Seattle Seahawks 2019 NFL season.
Love it. Love it. Okay. So, Chris, how can people find you?
You can find me on Twitter at CKIDD206. Again, that's CKid206. Just first initial, my first name's Christopher, and then last name Kid, and where I represent 206 Seattle. And then it's pretty much all I use for football purposes. But yeah, Twitter, you can find me, hit me up, questions. Also, be sure to listen to Seahawks Man to Man. We just joined The Athletic. If you're looking for a new podcast covering the Seahawks or just hearing about a team that the Seahawks will be playing coming up during that week, we just had on one of the writers for The Athletic today that'll be dropping on Thursday, exclusively on The Athletic only. But again, we do have content for our free listeners as well, whether it's on Stitcher, Apple Music, or Apple
Podcast.
Podcasts, yeah, and all the other platforms, Spotify, you name it, we're out there. But yeah, check us out.
It's awesome, man. Congratulations. And yeah, I mean, like I said, I've recently started subscribing to your podcast and listening to it, and you guys had me
Appreciate that.
laughing today. So, for people who aren't Seahawks fans, go out there. It's a great podcast. You guys were talking Oakland last week, and
Yep.
so there's a lot of different content out there. So I definitely recommend it.
Yeah, we
So,
try to be different, man. We try to not just drill you with Seahawks content because we know there's a lot going on. Like, I'm sure Seahawks fans want to hear about Antonio Brown. Well, why not talk to an Antonio Brown or talk to a writer that works for the Oakland Raiders and just chop it up with him and get his insight? That way, Seahawks fans get to see the other side, and that's I think one thing we do really well on.
Well, I think that's
Right.
great. Just being part of the Athletic family, you guys get all those beat writers, and it's just amazing content. So you guys are doing great work out there over there. Congratulations.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much, man.
We I got one last question here, and
Wait,
I'll send us out. But I know you are a WSU fan, correct?
Graduated class of 16. Go Cougs.
Okay,
Yes, sir.
that's right. So what'd you think of the game the other night? How do you think your boy Anthony Gordon did? And I mean, I thought he looked good to me.
Yeah, I am
What do you
excited.
think?
I'm excited, man. It's gonna be another fun year. Last season, as Coach Lee said, everybody doubted us, blah blah blah, but we came out and we're gonna do it again. And so far, that's exactly what I'm expecting. Everyone's kind of like, the Cougs, they'll be decent. Okay, the Cougs will be decent. Come out here, have a shot to do something big, and I think Gordon is definitely the guy that can get it done. I'm just excited. Football's back. Basketball season's around the corner. My life is is going to be exciting. I love it. I love it.
Best time.
Right. I have bought tickets to the WSU Houston game. I'm here in Texas, so it's about a 4-hour drive for me to get over to Houston. So I'll be there September 13th, Friday, ESPN. It'll be a very nice game. I'm hoping we get the dub there. I think we got them, but we'll see.
Oh, we'll see. It's going to be fun, man. Go
Yeah.
Cougs.
Yeah, always go Cougs. So as for myself, I am Flex Mike. You could find me at Flex Network 1 on Twitter. Flex Shane here. You can find him at, you took it away. There he is. At Seeley SEELEY _ Shane SHANE. You can find us there. You can find us on Instagram. You can find us on our Facebook page. You can find us on Twitter, obviously, and then just like you guys, we're on every podcasting platform. We're out there. All you gotta do is do a quick search, Flex Network, and we're gonna pop up there. So that's where we are. So well, Chris, I really appreciate your time. I appreciate you coming on, and hopefully we can do it again soon. So
Oh, yeah. Let me know, man. Just hit me up.
yeah, for sure. All right. So as for Shane, myself, and Chris, we are the Flex Network. See you guys later.